What better place could there be to kickstart a look back at one of the great names of British motorcycling than the Isle of Man? A hallowed name to all enthusiasts and the setting for the greatest road race of them all, the Isle of Man TT. Braddon Bridge, the Ballig Jump, Ballacrane and Ramsey are all names still familiar to motorcycling enthusiasts, but the names on the bikes in this archive film are now sadly history. Rudge, Excelsior, Norton, Velocet, AJS and Sunbeam. And it's Sunbeam that we want to take a closer look at now. Let's take a pillion seat peep over the shoulder at the pages of the magazine Motorcycling, or the Greenan as it used to be called. It gives us a glimpse of the Sunbeam glory years, the days when Sunbeam first was a regular headline. Now watch closely as we jump forward about 70 years and see the same bikes now beautifully restored and raring to go again on the Sunbeam and AJS Testers Run. The story starts at the Wolverhampton headquarters of Marston IMI Limited, the direct industrial descendant of John Marston Limited, who built the Sunbeam motorbikes all those years ago. Brian Cowan gives us the background.
Hello there, my name is Brian Cowan. I've worked at Marston's for about 38 years now. I'm the third generation of our family to work here. The first one started work here probably about 1923, I think, something like that. We've been involved with Sunbeams all our lives, all of us, me obviously being the last one. I am the machine shop foreman at present. There's probably about 9 people work for me. We don't work on motorcycles anymore, unfortunately. It's all aerospace work, but very accurate, as was the motorcycle side of it. This motorcycle is the Model 90 X-Works TT bike that Charlie Dodson is reputed to have rode to 4th place in the 1930 TT, breaking a lap record in the process and leading for 4 laps before, I believe, pushing it home to finish 4th. A few interesting details about it are the bike is basically a Sunbeam Model 9, originally a Model 9, and it was converted, not this model was converted, but the bike itself was derived from the Model 9, tuned with various other things being done to it, such as this particular model has got a 3-speed foot change box, which is one of the first ones that was fitted to a motorcycle that Sunbeam made. Anyway, it's not a positive stop box, so you have to feel your way through it. The power output is approximately 30 brake horse. The top speed is around 105, 110, or it was in those days. It did achieve 100 mile an hour about 4 years ago, being followed by a more modern motorcycle. I am riding it in the Testers Run that we have coming up soon in September. Hopefully it will perform as well as it did in the 1930 TT, not at the same speeds, I hasten to add, as we are on public roads.
I'm Malcolm Webster. I work for IMI Marston here in Wolverhampton. I've been working here for 27 years. At present, I'm involved in the manufacture of aircraft components, such as fabrications in stainless steel for fuel lines, things like that. In the early 80s, I was involved in apprentice training. In 1980, as a project for the apprentices, we decided to restore a Sunbeam motorcycle, as Marstons used to manufacture the Sunbeam bicycles and motorcycles. We acquired the bare bones of this machine as a box of rusty bits and pieces in early 1980 and set to with the apprentices to remanufacture the bike. To do this, we used a lot of traditional skills, such as remanufacturing the petrol tank out of tin plates using soft soldering techniques. The bike is a 1921 Sunbeam. It's a 3.5 horsepower, 500cc side valve machine. It incorporates one or two special Sunbeam features, including the leaf spring front fork and the fully enclosed rear chain case, which was called the Sunbeam Little Oil Bath Chain Case. This machine, as I said, was restored in 1980 and formed the first machine in the Marston collection, which has grown now to encompass some 20-odd machines, bicycles and a Sunbeam motorcar.
My name's Les Hobbs. I'm a member of the Marston Sunbeam Register. I bought this machine 6 years ago from Holland. We've managed to trace the motorcycle back to 1934. It started its life in Ireland. In the 30s it was allowed to become derelict. It then transferred to Holland, where I bought the machine from. It's a 1922, 8 horsepower, 996cc, Jap engined Sunbeam. Once the machine ran, we've had no trouble with it since. It's competed in 2 Banbury runs of approximately 70 miles each time. No trouble at all. I'm going to compete in the Testers run in September. I've travelled the course twice before, but never as a competitor. I'm hoping it's going to be a good day.
Fortunately for Sunbeam enthusiasts, Marston IMI are proud of their industrial past and have set up the Marston Wolverhampton Heritage Trust to aid the preservation of these wonderful machines. Here in the Heritage Centre workshops, members of the Marston Sunbeam Register carry out restoration and renovation projects. Such is the experience, knowledge and skill of the Register's members that even the most unlikely collection of 60 or 70 years old components can be restored to magnificent running order. This particular machine, for example, is undergoing a complete restoration. Frame and forks resprayed and rebushed, ball races, big ends, gudgeon pins, gearboxes, all completely stripped down and virtually rebuilt as new, maintaining not only the quality of the original condition, but also maintaining its character. Here, Brian Cowan, for example, familiar with the components of this 1930s non-positive stop gearbox, carries out a total rebuild, completely stripping down and renovating every component.
This is a 1927 Model 7, which is 600cc. It's a sidecar pulling machine, basically. And this particular machine's got a very interesting history. It was purchased brand new by a gentleman named Mr. Phillips, who was the chauffeur to the Lord Mayor of Liverpool. And Mr. Phillips rode this machine throughout his life, right up until the week before he died, when he used it just to nip down to the post office to collect his pension. It's under restoration now, but a sympathetic restoration, where we're trying not to over-restore it, but just to make it roadworthy and safe to ride. And over here we have another future project for us. This is a 1936 Model 9 Sunbeam, 500cc overhead valve. As yet we haven't sorted the parts out, and there's a lot of boxes of bits and pieces, but that's going to be a long-term project for the future.
My father was Joe Stevens, one of the 4 founding brothers of the AJS, manufacturers of motorcycles. We're standing now outside the building where the AJS motorcycles were first made in 1910. Previous to 1910, the brothers had been manufacturing proprietary engines for the cycle trade and the motor trade and industry in general. When they decided to make the full motorcycle, I should explain why they used the letters AJS. The proprietary engines that they made were named Stevens and were marketed as Stevens engines. When they wanted to make a complete motorcycle, they didn't want to compete with their customers who were already buying their engines. So they decided to use another name. And they chose AJS because only one of the 4 founding brothers had 2 Christian names. So that's why the name AJS was decided. So this building again was the first to use the name AJS. And you can just see the name on the side of the building there. In 1914, the Stevens brothers decided to enter the AJS in the Isle of Man TT. And they entered into the junior race and had a most outstanding success. They came in 1st, 2nd, 4th and 6th in the Isle of Man. And those bikes, those racing bikes, were manufactured completely in this little works behind me.
In the 1920s, each firm, AJS and Sunbeam included, had a team of testers, production testers and competition testers. Production testers used to test the ordinary production bikes, that is, just carburetors, clutches, brakes, etc. And the competition testers used to test the racing bikes and any prototypes that were in the offing. The normal testers, the ordinary tester, used to test them over fairly locally, that is Treasil, Wumburn, Kinver, etc. Whereas the competition testers used to test them further afield into mid-Wales.
I welcome all these motorcyclists who are keeping up the tradition of Wolverhampton in days gone by. In a short while I shall be starting the ride out to Dinas Mawddwy and the area, and I wish all the motorcyclists a safe journey today and tomorrow.
So while the riders sign on and collect their route cards and the tension mounts in the pits, so to speak, let's meet more of the riders, and even more interestingly, if they don't mind my saying so, let's take a closer look at some of their bikes.
Sun going to shine on.
Yeah, it can please itself, really.
Absolutely is.
Let's just check on a... Anyone got a route card?
That's all right. Okay.
Each setting walks all right.
I know where you're going there. I'm glad somebody did.
Hello, my name's Dave Bowen, and this is a Model 9 Sunbeam built in 1930 here in Wolverhampton. The bike belonged to my father, Jim Bowen, and was given to me on my 21st birthday. Jim Bowen actually bought this bike in 1964 for £30, and the idea behind that was to join the FIM rally in 1967, and it was basically a cheap form of transport which would get him to Red Square, and if it did break down he could leave it on the wayside and catch a lift back with someone else. He got to Red Square without any problems and all the way back, and on his return he put it in a shed for a number of years. As I say, when I was 21 it was my 21st birthday present.
The bike's a 350 overhead valve, registered 1927. I bought it from Frank Williams, commonly known as Tony Williams. He was the Sunbeam Works rider in 1932 and 33. And it wasn't finished, so I finished it off, and one or two bits missing, and I've been riding it ever since. I've had it about 4 years.
My name's Alan Fisher. I live in a place just outside of Hinckley called Sapcote. The only thing it's ever famous for is Selwyn Froggy. I've owned the bike about a year now, and it was part finished when I got it, and spent this year sorting all the bits and pieces out and riding it generally, and hopefully this winter we'll complete the bike and turn it into a proper motorbike. I'm just hoping the weather keeps fine, as I'm riding on the original bead edge tyres, and not having ridden in the wet on them, we're not too sure what's going to be happening. It might be quite exciting.
It's a 1928 Model 8 Sunbeam, which is a 350cc overhead valve. Relatively rare, weren't made a great deal. They weren't less popular than the bigger 500s. The first priority is to keep a check on the oil supply, which is a drip, which you see on the sight feed here, and you have to adjust by this little knob here, make sure it's dripping. If you're pulling up a particularly hard hill or anything like that, there's a supplementary plunger here, give it an extra squirt, because the oil is not recirculatory, it is a constant loss, total loss system, so it's burning its own oil. So that's your major thing. The other main thing is advance and retard, which is modern machines, it's done automatically, so when you go onto a hill you retard it off a bit so it doesn't detonate. We made sure that the dynamo is charging and showing a feed through here, which isn't, we can't always get it to charge. I have a little stick in my pocket and I poke it sticks through the hole there to close the points if it won't close up automatically, which it should do.
It's Robert Westwood and
David Bishop.
David Bishop.
If you look at the illustration on the 1931 this is the 30R, it looks remarkably similar to the 31.
Yeah.
They have a slight, according to the catalogue pictures, this is the 31 exhaust.
Yes, I would please.
You just
go, off on the Testers Run. 210 miles, rerunning the routes that the Sunbeam and AJS testers completed day after day in those long lost days when Wolverhampton was a centre of motorcycle manufacture. I'm going to sign off for a while now and sit back with you and enjoy the sight and the sounds of these superb examples of the classic British motorbike.
My name is David Davis, and I'm the secretary of this Testers Run and the co-organiser with Ray Jones. Both Ray and I feel very strongly that the wonderful deeds of the testers in the 20s and the 30s, riding out every day in all weathers to Wales, Dinas Mawddwy and back, needs some sort of commemoration, and this seems to be an ideal way of doing it. Although, of course, we take 2 days to do what they used to do summer and winter in one. This big port engine, of course, is based on the famous AJS TT winners of the early 20s. This is the bike that I'm going to use on the Testers Run. It's a 1924 big port engine, one of the famous and true big ports, and a 1927 frame. So the man that built it up originally, obviously, very sensibly,
made the best of both worlds, because the 1927 frame is stronger and had a stronger gearbox.
This is a typical AJS of vintage AJS. Flat tanker, small, light, 350cc, very popular bike in its time. It's an H5, which is a sports version of the touring H4. The touring version have footboards on either side and a different handlebar layout. I fitted this lighting system, which is genuine 24, 25, just with a battery and a rear light. As I say, it is very typical of the period. Up until the late 20s, motorcycles invariably had the Druid type fork, that is with the side sprung. It was only from 1929 onwards virtually that all models, including AJS, went to a centre sprung, which, as we know now, is the better type of springing. As you will see from this bike I'm building now, it is again a 1927. You can see it's very, very similar to the AJS. In other words, the same configuration, the frame. Actually, when you look at the frame side by side, you can hardly tell one from the other. Same sort of forks, Druid type with the side sprungs. The differences lie in the fact that the tank has a square cutaway there as against the bulbous type, which is a little bit more gothic, a little bit more design conscious, if you like. And the siddle in the head and the barrel are all in one. In other words, you haven't got a separate detachable head. But otherwise, both are typical examples of the normal production motorcycle of 1927.
We're just under halfway. How are you finding it at the moment?
Yeah, the roads are climbing fine, weather's good,
yeah,
and no problem with the bike so far.
course we take it steady. Didn't use much, Jane.
This is the gallon.
It's the headwinds, you know.
Yes, but that winding it open all the time. It's the basic model. It was the lowest of the low at the time, but only 3 now are known to survive. I think partly that's because they were the everyday hats for everybody, that they were worn out and just discarded. Because it's a side valve, it's sort of not got the oomph for some of the others. You tend to have to drop down to a lower gear and just let it slug its way up the hill. But it should climb anything, eventually.
Oh yes. Let's see if I get it.
I think so. Yeah.
My name's Peter Woodward, and I'm a member of the VMCC and also the Mars and Palmer Sunbeam Club, which is a 1929 Model 90 Sunbeam, and it's been built from parts. It isn't a sort of, it hasn't got a history or anything like that, but it's built as carefully as and as accurately as it can be to the original specification. It's turned out quite well, apart from the fact that it's getting a bit too much oil today, and it's oiled the plug off about 10 miles back. But I'd got a spare with me, so I changed it, and it all seems okay at the moment.
Ray Newton, Sunbeam Motorbike Club. Came today on an aerial.
Oh, that's original.
Yes, it's the only non-Wolverhampton bike here, I'm afraid.
I bet you're popular.
I have to go along the back so that they don't see. But I did arrive a bit late. Unfortunately, on the way to the start, got a puncture in the trailer, which took a couple of hours to sort out one way or another, so I was a bit late at the start. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow.
My father's had bikes for as long as I can remember, and he let me have a go on one of his bikes when I was 12. And then it was just a case of pestering him till he'd allow me to have one of my own. At 17 I started on the road, so I've been riding bikes for 20 years now. A lot of the cost is buying them. Once you've bought it, it's not too much to run. Obviously it depends if things go wrong, you've got to fix them. A lot of stuff you have to make, you can't just buy. But other than that, they don't really cost a lot to run.
It's a dying art now, roadside repairs. It's nearly always fetch the AA and they'll do it. Over the years you've done all sorts of things, bits of wire, nuts and bolts, string, tourniquets. I once broke a sidecar chassis and wedged a chisel down it and then bound it with rope. That was just to stop it dragging on the floor.
You normally enjoy riding on the...
Oh yes, the only way to see Wales in the countryside is off the back of a bike, yes.
Tell me some of the feelings you get when you're on the back of a bike.
Oh, you smell the air, you see over the valleys, you see everything off the back of the bike. It's different altogether. You know, you feel sorry for people stuck in their cars. It's quite different, yeah. It's lovely, yeah.
The worst problem that I had was when the clutch started to destruct itself in France, and I arrived home with just one stud out of the 6 remaining. But apart from that, no problems at all. Sunbeams, like Rolls Royces, don't break down. They always get you home.
What sort of feeling do you get when you're on the back of the bike?
Well, I've got that many layers of clothes on. I can't feel a thing. I just sit there with all these layers on. I mean, it could be doing anything, I don't know. I'm quite relaxed, quite comfortable, rely totally on Paul. When we go around the corners, right, I just shut my eyes sit there like a sack of sponge. If I feel he's going too fast, I just ignore it and we surface at the end. So I'm all right, I'm quite comfortable, quite used to it. But I do have to trust him, I must admit. And I don't think that I would like going on the back of anybody else's bike because I'm so used to going on the back of Paul's bike. It might take a bit more nerve if I had to go with anybody else, don't I?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Sunday morning and the weather has a distinctly Welsh look about it. Still, none of the bikes appears to have a hangover, and these modern day test riders aren't going to be put off by a spot of the wet stuff. So, making sure that collars are tightly buttoned up and the brake shoes are dry, the return leg of the run gets underway. sort of weather that the test riders of the 20s and 30s would have had to put up with as part of their job, and all for £2, 7 and 6 a week. Despite the pretty foul weather conditions, a number of the riders were determined to prove that they are at least as tough as the original test riders of the 20s and 30s. They decided to tackle the notorious Uckergrois climb. We can see why the route was chosen originally as a test run. The climbs, the descents and the corners would have certainly highlighted any shortcomings in engine power, braking or handling. So here we are, down out of the mists of Uckergroys and the chill of the Berwins, into the car park of the old Hand and Diamond pub, where fortunately the weather has improved so that lunch can be taken outside, après motorcycle as it were.
The bill for the room. He was on his own.
Well, David, we've done it, I think.
Nearly.
Nearly, yes.
50 miles to go.
Yeah, thanks for the encouragement, because I don't think we would have done it if you hadn't encouraged me. We've done very well, really. 18 machines and just 2 breakdowns. Yes. I'd like to thank you also for all your support in providing the breakdown van and the staff to man it. Also, I'd like to thank IMI Marston's for their contribution in the way of the backup van, the facilities, the car park, etc., for the entrance to park their cars, and also the provision of these very nice trophies with a bar for each year. Hopefully we shall do it again.
Yes.
And we thought it would be apt, Jenny, if we asked you as the Sunbeam Motorcycle Club secretary's wife to present them. We were thinking of getting Jeff Duke, but it's take rather a long while and he's got a rather distance to come. So perhaps if people could gather round the entrance and Jenny will present them with these very nice trophies. Thank you.
Haven't you been round before?
No, first time. We're coming round again in a minute.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. You have to hand it back if we don't finish the look.
Yes.
Right down Thank you very much.
Very much.
I should tell Kathy. I don't mind. I don't mind.
Thank you very much.
Can I have laughter and fire? I want a proper kiss. Thank you. Cheers. Cheers. Well done, Jane. Well done, well done. Thank you very much. Well done, well done. Thank you very much. Twice that vocal voice. Special clap. Yes.
A perfect setting for a simple closing ceremony and award presentation. A final chat among fellow enthusiasts and a simple but sincere toast to the next Sunbeam and AJS Testers Run.
Thank you.